I'd like to call this meeting to order. Can we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Town Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Mayfield,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Campo,
Here.
Commissioner Fender,
Here.
Commissioner Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Tompeck.
Here.
All right, are there any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda?
Move we approve the agenda as written.
Second.
All right, can I get a roll call for the agenda?
Vice Mayor Campo,
Yes.
Mayor Mayfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Fender,
Sure.
Commissioner Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Tompeck.
Yes.
All right, excellent. On to public comment. I'm going to give a reminder that if you have a public comment on an agenda item, it needs to be turned in to the town clerk before we get to that agenda item. And all public comments on non-agenda items need to be turned in by now. And
Mayor?
yes,
If I may,
yes.
are we doing consent agenda next?
I'm looking, you know what? It's different on the one I have. No?
Public comment is fine. You're good.
Okay.
Just making sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. 3 minutes for each comment, no back and forth between the commissioners and the speakers, and I don't see any. Do you have any that came in? Okay. All right, then we will move on to the consent agenda.
Madam Mayor, once again, I apologize. I'm going to ask if you or anyone from the commission can pull the police items out so that we can do the presentation for you
Okay.
separately.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
So move.
Second.
All right. Town clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Fender,
Sure.
Commissioner Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Tompeck,
Yes.
Mayor Mayfield,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Campo.
Yes.
All right. So do we want to, town manager, you want to do the police department now or when we're,
No, ma'am, you can go ahead and finalize your consent agenda.
okay.
I move we approve the consent agenda with that one exception.
Second.
All right. Can I get a roll call?
Vice Mayor Campo,
Yes.
Mayor Mayfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Tompeck,
Yes.
Commissioner Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Fender.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So town manager, do you want to do the police thing when we do, right before we do, I think we'll do that? You said to pull out the police department report and we'll do it right before the officer of the year or after that?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. All right, we will move on to proclamations and presentations, please. And I'm going to have the town clerk please read the proclamation. 211 Helpline Awareness Month.
Whereas 211 Helpline is proud to announce it is celebrating 50 years of service to our community. And whereas over this span of time, 211 Helpline has responded to over 3 million requests for help from people of all walks of life, providing the guidance and support they've needed. 211 continued to do so throughout the course of the current pandemic. Whereas requests for help more than doubled at periods in response to COVID-19 last year, caring staff continued to be that beacon of hope, providing crisis support when people are overwhelmed and do not know where to turn. 211 is available any time of day or night. 211 also has specialized advocacy and support programs that include Help Me Grow, Catching Children's Development Delays Early, and 211 My Florida Veterans provides peer-to-peer support and helps veterans to readjust, providing linkage to services for veterans and their families. 211's Life-Saving Sunshine daily telephone reassurance calls continue to brighten the lives of local isolated seniors and has expanded to include isolated caregivers. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Kaya Mayfield, hereby proclaim February 2021 as 211 Awareness Month in Sewalls Point and urge all citizens to be aware that if they are overwhelmed and in crisis or just need to talk, 211 is available anytime, day or night. Staff also provides referrals for mental health counseling, substance abuse, health care, employment, food assistance, daycare, support groups, volunteering, and free income tax preparation, and so much more. In witness whereof, I hereto set my hand and cause the official seal of the town of Sewalls Point to be affixed this 23rd day of February 2021.
Thank you, Town Clerk, and you can see in the agenda packet, there's some great information on 211. It's the kind of service that anybody in town can use whenever they are facing struggles, and this has been a difficult year for sure, so hopefully people take advantage of it if they need it. And let's move on now to the Police Department Officer of the Year presentation. Chief Tina.
Oh, I have to stand here. I have to talk really loud. You can get that on the microphone?
Probably not.
Here, let me put the microphone here.
In April of 2019, the Sewalls Point Police Department had the pleasure of hiring Officer Sebastian Gonzalez. Officer Gonzalez came to our organization with 9 years of police experience in both road patrol as well as the Detective Bureau. He's also a military veteran. Since his hiring, Officer Gonzalez has been one of our top officers for law enforcement, traffic safety, DUI enforcement, and successful warrant applications. He's a motivated officer who utilizes good officer discretion, maintains high levels of motivation during his shift, and is courteous to citizens. Officer Gonzalez communicates well with his supervisors and frequently goes beyond his normal duties for the best interest of the town and the police department. He remains vigilant not only to policing matters, but safety and other issues of concern for the town as a whole. Officer Gonzalez has been with the department for less than 2 years. One of the challenges in a small organization is scheduling training, so when it can be conducted in-house, it's a tremendous benefit. Officer Gonzalez has volunteered to become our agency instructor, and thus far, he's been certified in electronic control device, which you probably better know as TASER. This is a critical certification for officers, and it helps maintain our officers' compliance. Additionally, he's assisted in the instruction to our citizens in active assailant and shooter response training, as well as civilian TASER classes. Furthermore, he's received a life-saving commendation for saving the life of an overdose victim. He's had a very busy less than 2 years.
Yeah.
Officer Gonzalez has continued to exceed expectations in terms of his job performance, receiving ratings of superior performance. On a daily basis, he demonstrates a clear commitment to excellence and his loyalty to the department. As a result, Officer Gonzalez is recognized as the Officer of the Year for his dogged pursuit of excellence on the job every day. As the Chief of Police, I'm glad to have a skilled individual in Officer Gonzalez, and I will rely upon him to provide excellent policing services to the town of Sewalls Point. Officer Gonzalez has contributed significantly to the success of the police department and deserves to be recognized for his efforts, which is why he's the Police Officer of the Year for 2020. Congratulations.
I want to thank God for this moment, for making it possible, for leading me here to work with such an amazing organization, for giving me such an amazing chief, and such an amazing lieutenant, just leadership in general, and just for being able to serve such a tremendous community. I also want to thank my wife for her support, and without which I don't think I could get very well. So just thank you. I'm very honored and very humbled.
Officer Sebastian, would you like to take a photo with your wife up here?
Wrong answer, brother.
Very cute.
He's not getting dinner cooked for him.
Very good.
I'll tell you that.
All right, thank you. Well deserved, and Chief,
Well deserved.
yes, well, Chief, yes, exactly. Don't go too far. You're up now for the,
Get all over at once, right?
End of the
Madam
year
Mayor,
report.
while the
Yes.
chief is getting ready, I will say that on my first week to 2 weeks, I think, I was in my office and I had an opportunity to listen with one ear as Officer Gonzalez was outside of my window with a resident who was very upset, very concerned, and he was able to counsel, coach her back through a process, and then be able to calm her down. So
Excellent.
that was my introduction to Officer Gonzalez. So
Excellent.
we are very fortunate. Thank you very much.
And that is one of the fortunate things about getting officers with, not just with police experience, but also of an age where they have some life experience, that they're able to go ahead and mitigate a lot of things that sometimes, in the absence of that wisdom, could be more problematic than it needs to be. So we are grateful to have someone so even-tempered and wise. So what we have here for you is, this evening, it's a little bit delayed because, you know, you guys had some really busy meetings with all the projects going on. But we did kind of want to let you know what we've done in the last year. I know it seems amazing, but we have patrolled over 78,000 miles in the town of Sewalls Point. We've got 15 miles of roads, so we do spend a lot of time patrolling. And part of that is we also get a lot of requests for extra patrols. So we performed over 8,000 of those last year. In our travels and responding to calls around town, we found 94 doors unlocked that we secured, which I know for some of you who've been in things historically over time, you'll realize that a lot of times seems our residents' first meeting of the police department is because we found their house unlocked. So that is something that for everyone's security you want to have happen, and we do find that a lot. We had 261 police service calls. So when you see those on our spreadsheet, those are things that may not fall necessarily into a category like an assault or a battery or a DUI. It kind of, probably a nice way to say MISC, is that's what the nature of those calls are. There are other miscellaneous things not in the specified group. But we responded or instigated up to 237 suspicious calls last year and performed 1,037 traffic stops, approximately 56% of which received citations. So I know that's something that as commissioners you've asked before about whether we warn people, and you know, there are a lot of variables that come into the issuance of a citation. It's slightly better than 50-50 on you receiving a traffic citation. You may receive a written warning or a verbal warning instead, but we do conduct a fair amount of traffic stops, as well as vacant house checks. You know, over 1,000 vacant house checks last year. We've issued 83 crime prevention notices. Those are things like if you left your trunk open in the middle of the night, or your car door wide open, or your garage wide open in the middle of the night. Those are things that we may leave for you to let you know you might not want to do that. We've backed up the sheriff's office 173 times last year. So, you know, that's something that we've talked about a lot in the past in terms of backup for officers and things of that nature. Yes, the sheriff's office will respond for backup if we call them and ask for them, but we're backing them up probably as much as they're backing us up. Just because, again, there's challenges everywhere in hiring. The sheriff's office has, you know, experienced some of those challenges as well. So we are out there backing each other up. And we had one assist this year for St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office where our officers apprehended 2 subjects wanted for a murder charge out of St. Lucie County. They'd shot up a house up in Port St. Lucie. We had 48 disturbances and 15 domestic incidents. We addressed 551 code violations, 11 of which resulted in fine citations. As you know, it's been our practice to talk to people, try to coax, cajole, orange hang tag, and warn people before we resort to that. We'd much rather gain compliance. We followed 671 buses, and believe it or not, 4 people did receive traffic citations for passing a stopped school bus with a police car sitting behind it. And I will say most of the time those are our residents who know that we're following the school buses. So, you know, that is one of those tasks that, you know, probably not a lot of police departments out there do, but we do think that ensuring the safety of our kids at the bus stops is something important. So if we're not doing something else at the time of the schedules, and they all do keep the schedules, that is something that we do. You know, if you think to yourself, if we already write 4 with a police car behind them, what would be going on if we didn't take on that task? So we do think that that's a valuable service to our youngest residents. We had 112 medical assists and 72 assists for fire rescue, and we responded to 202 citizen assists. Those could have been folks locked out of their car, locked out of their house. I've got a problem, there's a lot of things they come to us and ask for help with. I know you guys have heard a significant number of complaints about traffic enforcement. Last year, we specifically conducted 356 complaint-driven traffic enforcement efforts. Those are, somebody's complaining, they speed on my street, here or there, and we're taking the effort to dedicate time out of that officer shift, go ahead and specifically target those areas. We had 5 deaths last year that we investigated and 140 alarms. We also had 2 assaults. And we performed 28 traffic-related arrests. Those are things like DUIs, no license, suspended licenses, things of that nature, and took 20 identity theft reports. We also had 3 residential burglaries, one of which involved a stolen vehicle, and that vehicle was recovered, and someone did actually go to jail for that burglary and stolen vehicle. We had 47 reckless vehicle complaints, 17 trespassing. We did 56 assists for animal control. We get a lot of animal complaints here. So that's something because of the fact that, again, they have so few officers. Our officers are the ones that primarily handle that. We had 4 warrant arrests. We had 37 traffic crash investigations. 6 of them were hit and runs. And that's relatively consistent. In past years, I've actually taken time to go back and look at numerically where we are with traffic crashes. If we take out the time period where we're constructing bridges, we average anywhere from 30 to 40 traffic crashes a year, largely on the A1A corridor, the intersection there in North Sewalls Point Road. Very few crashes on the south end of town. We had 2 batteries, and in case somebody's wondering, the difference between an assault and a battery is an assault kind of like I'm going to kick your butt, and a battery is I've actually have means to execute that threat. So we've got, those are 2 different things. Then we come to last year. Something I don't need to tell you is last year's a really weird year, and it's still a little bit now. The pandemic changed a lot of the things, not just in the police department, but the town hall as well. It seems like so long ago, but we had our first meeting about this January 30th last year. In some ways it seems like yesterday, and some ways it seems like forever ago. The good thing is in my personal opinion, I think the town as a whole did a phenomenal job executing protocols to keep citizens safe, keep us safe, folks who receive services from the town. We still collaborate with all of our community partners. We meet weekly to largely now discuss vaccination schedules, and the town is continuing to go ahead and try and advocate for pods and things of that nature in Sewalls Point. But it's gonna take time. But I do want to let you know that is something that we do advocate for on a weekly basis. I'm not sure if it's that you or
Sorry.
okay. And I think that we put in a lot of place, a lot of protocols. We have plenty of equipment, ways to stay safe. You see all your little habit trail shields there, and I think we've changed configuration out here to really provide a safer environment so that you can continue to interact with your citizens and still stay as safe as possible under the circumstances. But even though we had COVID, other things we did not stop. We still had other disaster preparations. We participated in an annual basis in radiological exercises due to the nuclear power plant, and the town of Sewalls Point is part of the primary evacuation route. Lieutenant Wade, Officer Garcia, and Officer Gonzalez all participate in those activities. So they had their first exercise in January, and then they did an actual physical decon out at the Station 14 out on the island. That was participated in by Officer Gonzalez. Because again, we still have to continue to prepare for all hazards regardless of whether or not other things were going on. Also for disaster preparation is we've been working on procuring some water rescue equipment due to some of our deep water areas, especially during potential hurricanes, things of that nature. We do have, the Sheriff's Office does have some deep water vehicles, but in a situation where they're in use elsewhere and we needed something readily, I did secure the donation of an inflatable Zodiac, and we are also getting grant funding to be able to put a little foldable trailer if we need to put it on there. So if need be, we could certainly get to pretty much any resident here in town under certain circumstances if we needed to. We've also gone ahead and secured throw ropes and life jackets specifically designed for law enforcement. Just keep in mind, I know it might sound funny that why on earth all of us who can swim need a life jacket in 3 feet of water when you're out there in hurricane conditions, that we're still out there in very high winds, dynamic situations. You could get literally hit in the head with a coconut and find yourself drowning in 3 feet of water. So those things do matter. So we want to make sure that our vehicles or our personnel are safe. We've also ordered deep water vehicles. And as I emailed our town manager the other day, if you're not aware of it, there's a global conductor shortage for vehicles, which is delaying the delivery of our Chevys. They're guessing sometime maybe in September. It's not just Chevrolet. All the different manufacturers are having this issue. You can do a Google search on it, newspaper articles. But all of these are going towards enhancing our capability of responding in deep water and keeping our personnel safe while they do it. Also this year, the police department represented the town of Sewalls Point on the complete count committee for the census. The census is very important. It is what dictates where billions of dollars go. And Sewalls Point's response rate was 75.5%. So we should congratulate ourselves. That was the highest response in Martin County. It was higher than the national response. We really did an excellent job in going ahead and responding to that, and hopefully that will translate into increased dollars down the line, both in our area as well as the county as a whole and the town of Sewalls Point. We also continued our training efforts for active shooter and active assailant training. And that was with Officers Betcha, Gonzalez, as well as Lieutenant Wade. I don't know if any of you have been to any of those trainings. I would highly encourage you that the next time that we have one to be there, because it's not just a lecture format. If you choose to participate, they do actually, using Nerf guns, have some active assailant type trainings to be able to show what the difference is in the results and survivability based upon how individuals who find themselves in these situations respond. I would tell you that I do think that it would not be time wasted on your behalf to attend. You know, it's the kind of thing where statistically the likelihood of this happening to you is small. But if nothing else, it gives you food for thought that when you go into places where even you realize, you know, this could be, if somebody's gonna pick a place, this might be the place. If this were to happen, you're thinking, how would I respond? And that's what I hope folks get out of that training, is just to make them think about it. It's the same way, you know, police officers, when we go into places, we think, well, somebody comes walking in the front door, you know, with a gun. What are we gonna do? I mean, there's a fellow tried to do an armed robbery with a sheriff's deputy inside a convenience store. These things happen. But, you know, part of the training that we have, not just literal training that we go to, but in training yourself and how you're gonna respond, I think you think through these scenarios, whether it's how will I respond on a medical call, how will I respond on a high-risk situation. So I think that that's very valuable training for our citizens, and I'd encourage you to attend. We also recognize employees in 2020. Kathy Barbera, the police department's administrative assistant, was recognized by the Rotary Club in the Service Above Self Award. I think most of you know Kathy, but she's the first person citizens meet when they come to the police department, and she does largely set the tone for their experience. She's polite, she's eager to help people, and the citizens count on her. They know what information she has, how she can relay it. She makes sure during hurricanes, things of that nature, that everyone is properly tagged, finds out who's staying, who's going. And she really has earned the trust of a lot of the citizens, that they know she's somebody they can count on and that they can call for information. And we are glad that the Rotary Club gave us a vehicle in which to go ahead and recognize her for those efforts, because she really does a terrific job, not just for the citizens, but internally, making sure officers are aware of their court appearances. This last year, with everything being somewhat, not so much face-to-face, there's a substantial increase in her workload in terms of transmitting documents, things that normally would have been delivered. We're having to find alternative ways of doing it, taking different types of messages and calls over the phone. So she's a large part of helping us go ahead and meet the needs in this last year that's been very challenging. And then also the Acacia Lodge, which is a local Masonic lodge, also recognizes an Officer of the Year kind of mid-year. So traditionally, it's always been the last Officer of the Year, which was Officer George Betcha, which you're familiar with. And as I mentioned, he has assisted in training citizens. He's had several life-saving awards. He's our intelligence coordinator. He makes sure that we're all briefed on any intelligence reports of significance so that the officers are apprised of what's going on, not just locally, but also regionally, that could potentially be a threat to us or the community. And he's just an all-around good officer. So we're grateful to be Acacia Lodge to go ahead and recognize him. This year, we've also secured 3 separate grants. One was the Bulletproof Vest Program that provides for partial reimbursement of body armor as it's replaced on its 4-year cycle. It pays for 40% of the panels and the standard carriers. So it's not a huge amount, but it is $1,030 that we will be able to get back on an item that we have to replace on a regular cycle. We also received a $1,000 grant to enhance our water safety rescue equipment. And like I said, we're looking to purchase a trailer that will fold, that we can set in the garage so it doesn't take up too much space to make it readily deployable. And then the larger grant was through FDLE, and it was the Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding Grant. The good thing about this grant is that the funding is available for use through January 31st of 2022, so we still have a whole year to spend this. And it was $34,000. And it doesn't just cover things like masks and gloves. You know, we can purchase hands-free dispensers and paper towel dispensers, other types of PPE, cleaning and disinfecting buildings, equipment that you could use to do that. Also telecommunication software, laptops, cameras, anything that can be used to enhance the virtual experience. We can use it to cover overtime shifts if we had staff shortages due to COVID, and also to purchase, you know, things like to see some door openers, open doors automatically so you're not touching everything, because that's certainly a concern. So that one was relatively significant. And we'll be looking at pursuing the spending related to that over the next year. Other ongoing projects is updating our policy manual. We don't have a dedicated legal advisor in the police department, so we have contracted with Lexipol to create a legally supportable policy manual for the department. They monitor changes in laws at the federal and state level, and they provide up-to-date legal guidance as well as best practices with their contracted agencies. They also provide online learning content, so we're not just handing policies to officers. They actually receive little short trainings that they need to do that helps to go ahead and continue to reinforce the policy content. This is something we're literally having to start from the ground up, and we expect it to be fully completed and in place by the end of 2021. And Lieutenant Wade is actually the lead on that project. We're also in the transition to Tyler Technologies Records Management Computer-Aided Dispatch. All of the law enforcement agencies in Martin County have a consortium and will all be using this software. It's a very large endeavor, and truthfully, it's something that probably several of the smaller agencies might not even be able to afford to do, except for the fact that it is such a large group, and we're only having to pay for it based on your actual number of officers. It's basically going to finally kind of bring us into the modern era in terms of reporting, data collection, we're switching to something called NIBRs, which you folks probably hear the news talk about. UCR crime stats have come up, and that's a very small grouping of crimes. And in a place like Sewalls Point, it's really not very hopeful, because, like, as an example, this year they said we had I think it was a 3,000% increase in recovered stolen property. Well, it's because one very expensive item was taken and we got it back. So in a little place, you know, when you have very small numbers, it's not very beneficial. With NIBRs, it's actually, we're going to be required to report on a monthly basis all of the things that you've actually done in your department versus that small little group of categories that you're reporting under UCR. So this is going to aid in that and facilitate that reporting. Coming up for this year, we have 2 audits scheduled. We are literally audited by the state in several different ways. This year will be our David audit, which is every 2 years. That is the driver's license system. And they review our internal quarterly audits, that we have all of our confidentiality agreements and documentation for emergency contact utilization. And then we have our FDLE technical audit, which is every 3 years. This is a very, very technical, special audit that we could never do without our partners at the Sheriff's Office and IT. I mean, it gets down to the diagrams of our network, who can touch what, how everything is secured. Literally, every checkbox that exists on a computer, they're going to dictate to you how those boxes will or won't be checked. And that's going to be occurring this year, and that's a project that I'm also working on with the head of IT over at the Sheriff's Office. So in spite of our COVID efforts, I think our officers were quite busy in the last year, and this is consistent with our regular job performance on a year-to-year basis. Like I said, we just did some stuff differently, maybe in some of the citizen contacts and doing more things over the phone if we could, or from a little bit further away, but still been quite busy.
All right, thank you, Tina. That was a great presentation. I have a couple questions. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Okay, Commissioner Tompeck?
Yes, thank you very much, and excellent presentation, Chief. I was curious, and there may be a question for the town manager, not necessarily for the chief, but do we do anything for COVID-19 in terms of modifications of the air conditioning units, adding ionization units or anything like that?
We did not, but what I do know about our systems, and Jack might be better versed on this, is that I do know that they have special filtration in them, and they come out on an annual basis to service those. So it's not like our system doesn't use regular garden variety air pure filters. But what we did do in response to COVID is, you notice the air purifier sitting in front of you. This will more than circulate all of the air in this room in under 10 minutes. We have those in all of the office spaces as well as the common areas. And the good thing about these is that the filters only need to be replaced annually, which results in some lower costs, because even though there's a lot of COVID money out there now, we want to keep our folks healthy in the long term. So that's something that'll be a minimal cost on a year-to-year basis going forward post-COVID.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Fender?
Thanks for that presentation, Chief. I don't really have a question. I just want to commend you and your staff for the excellent work you do year-round. I've lived in this town for 18 years, and I would say above and beyond, one of the outstanding aspects of being a resident of Sewalls Point is the excellent care you and your team provide all of the residents. And I could say not a week goes by where something doesn't bring that to the forefront. Just this week, Officer Wade rescued a dog, I think, at Wagnolia's. It got a ton of social media activity. But throughout the year, the 4th of July festivities, the Christmas parades, you as a chief, having grown up through your career in this town, have blossomed into what I think is probably the heart and soul of Sewalls Point. So again, thank you for everything you do for us.
Thank you. Make sure the officers know that they're genuinely appreciated. And I know for them, that is one of the great things about working here is this is, you know, you hear police officers a lot of times saying that they don't feel appreciated in this town. You do feel appreciated every day. As a matter of fact, the world's best cookie baker brought us our favorite cookies today to say thank you. So.
Thank you, Tina. And I will say that amongst the bus stop crowd, that is one of the highest points for Sewalls Point is the police cars following the bus, and all the moms and dads really appreciate it. It's a wonderful service, so thank you. And thank you for the presentation. Great job.
Thank you.
Yes, Town Manager?
One last compliment,
Yes.
if I may, Mayor and Commissioners. Chief, when this COVID started, she was right on top of immediately getting out and creating a sense of urgency to collect the supplies, not just for our needs, but potentially the needs of the community, including driving from dollar store to dollar store before all the shortages began. So this town was well equipped with, as you know, our masks and ability to share, including with other agencies, in a way that other municipalities were not prepared. And I must tell you that that was a direct response of the efforts and immediately jumping into anticipation of what most would not anticipate by our chief. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, we are going to move on to public hearing of ordinances. First reading, the first one, or the first and only one is ordinance number 432, on-site surface water retention code change. And Town Attorney, could you please read the ordinance title into the record?
Yes, ordinance number 432 is an ordinance of the Town Commission of the Town of Sewalls Point, Florida, amending Chapter 52, Stormwater Control Regulations, Article 2, Purpose and Intent, Section 52-3024, on-site retention, to modify the method for calculating required on-site retention, providing for severability, the repeal of laws in conflict, codification, and an effective date.
Thank you, Glenn. I'm going to open it up for public comment, and seeing none, I will close the public comment. And now, is there any discussion amongst the commissioners? Commissioner Tompeck?
Yeah, just a couple of quick items, and I've already discussed some of these with Joe Capra. On Section 2, where it talks about general provisions, each new or substantial improvement project, and I think the wording is a little loose there. I think it needs to really say something like, I'm not sure exactly the wording, substantial improvement that affects the impervious or pervious sections of the property. In other words, if somebody's spending a small fortune refurbishing the inside of their house, obviously that wouldn't be part of this. So I think that we might want to put some wording in there so that they don't stretch any kind of an improvement project that, certainly wouldn't affect the storm runoff. The other thing is, because I'm an engineer, I felt obliged to try to make this formula work here, and I couldn't do it. So Joe, I talked to Joe, and he talked about it. We can probably clean up the wording on that to include, the square footage of the lot here. That's part of the equation, which really isn't here. So those are the only two comments I have.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Kurzman?
Yeah, as far as homes that are putting a small fortune and stuff, but if they're homes that were, when they were built, they could be the biggest culprits that are flooding, especially some of the river properties up there. You have properties that are literally holding no water, zip. This is our one chance that we have to actually go ahead and get them to hold water. I think it is important that we do that. We have a lot of pre-existing conditions from a lot of the bigger properties up there. And what they're doing is they're flooding the lower streets, and that's what creates the floods ultimately on Sewalls Point Road. So if we have an opportunity to get them to make the improvement and to prevent flooding for all the other residents and to make the roads easier to pass, that's the one reason why I think we should leave it open. If they already have enough water retention there, I don't think it's a big deal. But the idea is to go ahead, and if they've already put a fortune in this, they could put a little more toward saving the home that's right across the street from them getting flooded out. This gives us a great opportunity to enforce something that normally would not be enforced, because I know right up the street from me right now, there's an empty lot. And even with the not even tremendous amount of rain that we just had, you were watching the rain come right off, the water come off the lot, and you can see the dirt in the road and water coming in the road. So we do need to do something, especially with some of these bigger homes, with the bigger properties. Whatever we could do to get them to retain more water on the property, and that's really what this is about. It's self-water retention. It's not a punishment. It's something that's really going to help overall, because we're putting millions of dollars right now with the road work that we're doing, and this will help substantiate what we're doing and also allow us to hold extra water. It's less
Burden. Yeah.
And as far as the existing system goes, and it takes away some of the burden that the lower systems have by somebody, if every big residence was to hold just a little bit more water, everything adds up. It really does. But I do appreciate what you were saying.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Campo?
Well, Dave Kurzman deserves a lot of credit for putting this card on the table. We all have to do our parts. When we identified the water storage as a #1 project, I understand and agree with John in regards to defining substantial improvement. Someone could drop $100,000 into a kitchen improvement. That sound familiar, John?
That was a little less, but not much.
And yet it has nothing to do with, the property. So might we put in a couple words, Glenn, maybe you have some suggestions on substantial improvement that might affect the exterior or something that would, not affect someone that's doing a cosmetic significant improvement on the interior that gets crossed up and saying, because I have to put in new cabinets, all of a sudden now you want me to regrade my side yard. I think that could be a problem. Thank you for that time.
Yes, Glenn, and to that note, is this the one that is the substantial improvement defined elsewhere, is that 50% of property value increase where then you have to come up to code?
I was actually just looking at,
Okay.
trying to find the code to see if substantial improvement is usually defined as value of more than 51%, but I'm trying to find it in the
Okay.
code right now. But to Commissioner Tomczak's point, are we looking at pervious versus impervious surfaces as compared to interior, exterior? I mean, that, and I have to defer to Joe. I mean, from an engineering standpoint, I think you understand the commission's point is to try to retain as much water on site if someone's doing an improvement that impacts that. So I guess the point is, if you're doing a $100,000 kitchen remodeling, is that going to really impact your pervious, impervious? And to Commissioner Kurtzman's point, any substantial improvement, depending on how you define it, probably should impact that. So I've got to turn it over to Joe because it's really an engineering question.
And before we do, if I may, your building official makes the recommendation that we put the definition into this ordinance before second reading, but it applied to external improvements specifically because it's about the footprint of the home, not if you add a new kitchen.
Okay. Joe, do you want to go first, or Jack, do you want to? Okay.
Can I just add one thing to that
Yes.
too? Substantial improvement to the exterior of the house. Some of these larger houses, a substantial improvement would be a new roof. And it would be really hard to justify to them to tell them that they would now have to retain more water because technically they really didn't affect anything. But if they did an addition, they did a new driveway, or they did a pool, something that would take up some area, then I could understand that and it's easier for them to
Okay.
follow that.
Okay. So Glenn, can you add in more wording to?
Well, I did find that in this chapter, substantial improvement is defined as something that's equal or exceeds 50% of the market value of the structure. So if you have $1 million house, you could spend $450,000 and not be considered a substantial improvement, even if it's $450,000 in external. So you may want to think about a completely different definition for this because you're trying to capture water, literally, as opposed to the normal time when someone's got more than 50% of the value of the house. It's almost like a tear down from the, but again, I'll defer to the building official. So is there some, we may need to bring this back for first reading again if there's going to be a lot of changes, but I think you're all bringing up a good point. What's the goal? Is the goal to deal with improvements that impact the impervious and pervious surfaces? And if that's so, then I think maybe, Joe, we all rewrite this to say if it changes the amount by X as opposed to substantial improvement, because I could easily see spending, $500,000 on $1 million house that does a big change to the pervious and impervious, but wouldn't quite meet substantial improvement.
Joe, did you want to add anything? Or, oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Kurzman.
Yeah,
You want to go before Joe speaks, or do you want?
yeah, I want to add something.
Okay,
I
Commissioner
wasn't
Kurzman.
referring to like a kitchen remodel, I want to make that clear. What I'm referring to is like, if you look at number 73 South River Road, that's a gut job. The whole inside right now is torn apart, it's down to the studs. And when that's done, I feel that a new person's coming in, the property was just sold, there's no reason, and if you look at the way the property is, it wouldn't hurt for them because it's a large piece of property to go and retain some water. That's what I'm referring to. In other words, you have what we call gut jobs that are
Right.
out here, and there's a few of them
Right.
out there. That's one. I know there's one in High Point. Once that's sold, that's going to be a gut job. And these homes, because it's a substantial
Yeah.
amount of money that these people are going to pay to redo these, it's going to increase the value. The insides are severely just, their best days are behind them. So what's coming in is somebody's going to come in and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to gut an entire inside of the house, even if it doesn't have to do with the footprint. I still feel that they should be able to retain water, especially if a property is changing hands. You got a new owner coming in, it's just gonna gut a house out. I feel, why not? It's change of hands.
Yeah.
They're gonna spend a lot of money, they already spent a lot of money on the house, but it's something that benefits the town. To me, it's like a new home at that point.
Right.
And even my little property, Joe will tell you, I'm retaining water on it. You know, you're talking, I think my whole property is maybe 14,000 square feet, if I'm correct. And I'm retaining more water than I was before. I'm just trying to do my part at this point. And that's
Right.
pretty much all we're asking. And, you know, I'm not a big piece of property, but, you know, every little bit counts. That's really where I'm trying to go. Whatever we could do, I think we should do.
So I think it sounds good for what you're talking about. Internal substantial improvements would require them to increase the retention, the 50%. I think that seems reasonable. And then if we wanted to add on the exterior differences, the pervious, impervious. Joe, did you want to, you've gone up to speak and we've kept going ahead of you, but if you can just touch on it and we could bring it back for a first reading if that's how we want to do it since we're changing it.
Okay, so the intention of the change, okay, the community, you all, are going to be making a substantial investment in your stormwater management system. And we've been calling it great things like resiliency and so forth. And you know, there's just so much you can do. Basically, you can do whatever you can within public right-of-way, but what's happening in the community is we have drainage from the lots that is not being retained. Many of the subdivisions do not have current stormwater facilities, or the facilities that were planned were filled in, like swales and things like that. So we're trying to make an effort that everybody, well, let's say, shares the burden of upgrading the stormwater system to meet the newer conditions. At the same time, we don't want to be overbearing on people and making it so that they can't accomplish what they want with their properties. So I wanted to make sure you understood that we looked at lots of all sizes, and what we are asking to upgrade from 1 inch to 3 inches is an insignificant change to people's properties. However, you would say, well, why don't we ask for more? Well, the reason we didn't ask for more is we looked around at other municipalities and what they're allowing, and although some will go to extremes, we know in Martin County the 3-inch number is already allowed there. So we kind of went to the 3-inch number, and that's what's in the part of the formula up there. So, I mean, is relative to the wording, substantial improvement, again, the intention is if we substantially increase the impervious surface, we want to make sure that we accommodate some kind of stormwater management improvement. There are, I mean, we can look back to things such as in municipalities, and Glenn knows more about this than I do sometimes, but in municipalities, when you increase the site improvements by increasing impervious areas by 5%, of course, they go through a whole review of your projects, okay, to make sure that you meet current codes. That's one thing we could use that as an example. I don't know if we need to go to the percentage because, to be honest with you, Jack's going to look at an improvement that comes in on a project. He's going to see the impervious surface has increased, and he's going to say, well, let me see. The neighbor next door is already complaining about flooding from this property, and these people may need to do a little bit more improvements. And he's going to encourage them to do more. We've tried to set up a formula that is very reasonable here and what I like to call legally defensible. So that's, having said all that, I think we can change the language just a little bit for that substantial improvement to just say impervious areas of the site. I did adjust some wording based on discussions with John as well as the town manager, and I put it up there on the screen just so you know. But basically on page 2, I thought maybe we could make the wording a little clearer, and it's pretty much in red up there, but in the first, the term says 3 inches times the 45%. That's the maximum impervious surface on a property, okay? That's what's allowed. And at this point, I'm saying we need to try to obtain not only 3 inches, but we need to consider what is the volume that they would have to cover if they maximize their impervious surface. And that's why I use the 45%. Times the lot are in square footage. We probably should have put in there the lot area in square footage, okay? And so that, because when you divide it by 27 and 12, what you're trying to accommodate is as a cubic footage amount of water, okay, it's a volume, cubic foot, and we want to convert it to volume in cubic yards. So essentially, I would recommend after the colon, it would be 3 inches times 45% maximum allowable impervious area times the lot area in square footage divided by parentheses 27 times 12, which is a volume of retention in cubic yards. So it's pretty clear we're trying to say this is how much volume you need to have store on your lot. The intent of that, again, is not only you've accommodated the impervious surface that could happen on your lot, but at the same time, you're trying to make sure that it doesn't discharge onto your neighbor's property, which is what we've been getting complaints about. So that's the changes I'm recommending relative to some of the wording. I mean, as far as the substantial improvement project, I think it's probably more relative to the impervious area increases, and whether it's any impervious area increases or 5% increases, we can debate that if you'd like, so.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Commissioner Fender?
I was just going to possibly suggest or throw out a wording suggestion. It may or may not be correct, but before I did that, I was confused by the 27 times 12. Divided by 27 times 12.
With 20, basically, the first thing you got to do is convert everything into to cubic feet, and you have 3 inches. We got to divide that by 12 to convert that to feet. Okay?
That turns into a percentage of some kind or some amount of the property?
Well, the amount of the property is
The water volume?
It's 45, the lot area in square footage, okay? So there's 43,560 square feet in a 1 acre lot. Most of our lots are half an acre, so it's close to 22,000 square foot roughly. So basically that number would be the lot area of 22,000 square feet.
Wouldn't divided by 27 times 12 just be an integer? 27 times 12?
We could make a number, yes, you're right.
Okay, all right.
If you want to make it easier, that's true. I just wanted to make sure we followed what we were trying to accomplish here, but you're absolutely right. We
Okay.
could change that to one, for that matter, we could take 3 inches times
24 times
45%,
27 times 12
and then
is
just say the area of the lot divided by 27 times 12.
5.
Okay, thank you.
But I was going to suggest to your point and Commissioner Tompeck's point about not having this impact to other parts of of other types of projects, if you just simply added a clause at the very first sentence of Section 2A, the existing wording is each new or substantial improvement project and or site. And then if you entered that impacts or changes the existing percentage of impervious surface on the property, then carry on to shall, because then you wouldn't be impacting anything other than those projects that actually change the dynamics of your impervious surface, right?
Yes.
And I think that's what Joe's logic was when he
Okay.
explained that, and I could agree with that as well.
Okay.
Commissioner Kurzman?
Yes. One more thing which wasn't in there. Upon the sale of a home, just like with the septic tank, that it's inspected in order to go in and get, I guess, a CO, I would like to see that upon the sale of a home, that the house, that before the owner actually moves in, is able to retain the water. I think that would be a big deal if we could do that. And especially considering a certain percent of the homes do change hands, and a lot of them are, like, I wouldn't expect the low-lying homes to have it, because it wouldn't make sense, because there's no place for them to really store the water. But when you go into the higher homes, I feel that, if the home is eligible and it can retain the water and it's high and dry, but it lays water going down, why not, require it upon the, have so many days upon the new person moving in?
I think that sounds like an idea, maybe a workshop. I feel like it would be a separate item.
No.
No. Oh, Jack.
It would have to be in the language.
As far as a CO is given to a building once it's completed, and I can't continue to renew a CO. It's not in the building code. So I wouldn't be able to hold anybody up for an inspection or anything like that.
Right.
As far as the septic goes, those inspections are done with a home inspector, has nothing to do with the building code either. So, and there, the other thing is I would not even know about some of these sales that go
Right.
through and somebody else is in there. And also, it'd be really hard to tell if the drain field was working or not, or the retention area, I'm sorry. If, for instance, it was a drought or
Yeah.
time of a drought or anything like that. So
Okay.
you have to be cautious on that, but I just want to point one thing out is you always, sometimes you create a new problem when you try to solve one. And then
Yes,
you might create
exactly.
a problem of mosquito infestation when we have
Yeah.
those times of the year where we have the diseased mosquitoes, and that would be a perfect growing place for those.
Okay.
So we have to worry about that too. If we make it too large of a retention and it does hold water, then we would have that other problem too.
Okay. Good points, Jack. Thank you. And I think our town attorney wanted to, you pressed your button a while ago, sorry.
Yeah, I think from, just to try and make it clear, because I'm hearing different things, are we talking about if you're doing substantial improvements, that's one category, 50% or more, whether it impacts impervious surface or not, if you're spending more than $500,000 on $1 million house, you've got to deal with this issue. That's question one. Question two is, if you're even doing a small project, you're doing a $50,000 project, but that project impacts the amount of impervious surface, is that category two, where both of category one and category two, you want to capture more water?
Yes.
Yes, it sounded like that's what Commissioner Kurzman wanted, is because you have to bring, if you do the substantial improvement, you have to bring everything up to code, so that is already kind of a done
That's
deal.
what I thought
Yeah.
I was hearing, but then,
Yes.
I didn't know if they were,
Yes.
and then
Yeah.
on the second question,
Is adding
Joe-
something in.
Joe and Jack question, if they're impacting this amount of impervious surface, is there a percentage? You know, if someone impacts it by 1%, is that trigger it, or is it 5%, or is there a number that you trigger it? Because I could certainly see you do a project and you impact it by a fraction. As a homeowner, I'd be like, what are you
Yeah.
kidding me?
Yeah.
But what's that number? You know, I don't know, is it a 5% number, is it a 10% number? If you previously held an inch and now you can hold 9/10 of an inch or 1.1, or,
So why don't, I'm sorry?
but those are all questions that I'm not sure we have an answer for tonight, but is that the direction where we're going is what that's what I'm hearing, a 1 and a 2 different.
That was what I was hearing too, yes. And if we wanted to, town manager, would this be best to bring back as another first reading since we're changing it? Okay,
I think so too.
okay.
Yeah.
I don't, Madam Mayor, Glenn, we already have the definition for substantial improvement, correct? So that's not a substantial change on this.
Right.
So the only thing that potentially we're adding to this first reading is the lower impact issue of if they add to the pervious area.
Right. If
And that's
we
a
can come up
smaller
with that
impact.
percentage tonight, then we can just
Okay.
So it's not
approve it
as
tonight.
significant, so we may not need to go to another first reading. We just may need to
Sure.
address this, and it's a second reading. So we don't advertising again.
Okay.
With another cost there for advertising. But to me, the definitions that everybody's looking for are already in our code.
Yes.
And what you're looking for is to clarify for the homeowner that may not do a full-on substantial improvement, but may only do the improvements outside.
Yes,
Yes?
exactly.
Exterior?
Yes. So before we decide that, Commissioner Tombeck and Commissioner Fender, and then
Just, following up on Dave's comments, I think he would say if he make 1 inch of an improvement that covers an impervious area, that they should go back. I mean, if you're talking about making changes inside the house and going back, then any change to the, pervious versus impervious would have to be covered. So I wouldn't think we'd have to come up with a percentage other than what's already in here for that.
okay, is there a okay, I'll come back to Commissioner Fender.
Is there some speed requirement that we're trying to meet that wouldn't allow us to come back for another first reading? Is there a reason why we're trying to push to second?
Madam Mayor?
Yes,
Commissioner, no, I'm not trying to push it. I'm just, from a streamlined percentage, we've had this on at least one workshop. We've talked about it 2 or 3 times. And on this particular issue, it's already been advertised. And our advertising budget is pretty tight.
Okay.
And so if it's a matter of just clarifying, it's easy because we can make sure it's all done before second reading. And second reading doesn't even have to come back at the next meeting. It could come back 3 meetings from now, just to make sure it's done the
It
correct
seems,
way for final.
unclear enough to me that maybe it's worth talking about. So maybe if we can get it all done in a second reading, that's fine, but, seems like-
Commissioner Campo?
Just to take a stab, because it's getting late and we're spending a lot of time on this, I would think that you might be able to go with either a substantial improvement, which would be 50% of the value, or perhaps 10% increase in the impervious, such as if you put a brick paver walkway in your backyard, is that going to trigger this? I think we need to have some threshold, maybe
do it.
10% of the square footage. If you can increase the footprint by 10%, then that might be the second trigger. And I think that would be tight enough that we can, but I don't think we want to have it so limited that you have, a walkway through the garden and that's all of a sudden going to,
Right.
so, and I'd like to move on. I'd like to move that and move on with the motion or not have a first reading tonight. So let's get the show on the road.
Okay, I think we wanted both, the substantial improvement and what's going to change in the exterior, because they can both be there and they'll be successful. So Commissioner Kurzman, do you have a recommendation for the amount, or do you want to, you were the one who
Yes.
started this, do you want to bring this back for a second first reading, or do you want to?
I'd be willing to say 5% instead of the 10% if we can, because 10% is a lot. In a lot of cases, 10%, if you're talking, 3,000 square feet, that's 300 feet. If you're talking 3,000 square feet, so I figure 5% is a generous amount. And, this is just something, we're in trouble with the amount of water we've collected. We got to do something. This is the way we're going to go about it. It's not that we're being unfriendly to our neighbors, it's just that we're trying to do what's best for the entire town.
Okay.
And, I feel 5% would be a reasonable compromise if you're willing to agree with that. And just move this.
I don't feel like we have that, so I feel like you guys discuss, pick the percentage, and then we'll do another first reading can we take a vote? Should I take a vote on that, Town Manager, or should I? Okay,
Clarify what the motion's going to be.
I'm sorry, say that
I
again?
would need to clarify what the motion will be.
Okay,
If Dave wants to make a second motion, my motion was 10% because I'm thinking of these smaller houses, these interior homes, these $500,000, $6,000 homes that, people want to put some money into, and we want to encourage that. So if they add 150 square feet for them to say, hey, we're going to have to redo the whole landscaping, I think that's too small, 5%.
I'll support you on 10%.
Okay.
Just to get this
okay,
moving.
okay, excellent. Can I get a motion to approve the first reading, making the changes to the formula and adding in the exterior impervious or pervious surface
I'll
amount?
make the motion.
Can I get a second?
Excuse me,
Yes.
point of order. I believe Vice Mayor made the motion.
Yes.
Right?
I'll second it.
Okay, sorry about that. Any discussion? I think we've had a lot. Is there any more? All right, can I get a call the vote, please?
Commissioner Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Tompeck,
Yes.
Mayor Mayfield,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Campo,
Yes.
Commissioner Fender.
Yes.
Okay, made it through. All right, on to the next item. Public hearing ordinance second readings, and this is, the first one is ordinance number 427, the town official seal. Town attorney, would you please read the title into the record?
Yes, ordinance number 427 is an ordinance of the Town Commission of the Town of Sewalls Point, Florida, adopting Chapter 2, Administration, Article 1 in general, Section 2-3, Official Town Seal. Uses to provide for the adoption and protection of the official town seal and to provide for its uses and providing for severability, the repeal of laws in conflict, codification, and an effective date.
All right, thank you, Glenn. Open it up for public comment. I think there's none. I will now close the public comment. Is there any discussion amongst the commission? Seeing none, can I get a motion?
I'll move to
Commissioner-
approve ordinance 427 as amended, as presented.
Second?
Any discussion? No? All right. Town clerk, call the vote, please.
Commissioner Tompeck,
Yes.
Mayor Mayfield,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Campo,
Yes.
Commissioner Fender,
Yes.
Commissioner Kurzman.
Yes.
All right, that one was quick. Moving on to ordinance number 430, alcohol distance. Town Attorney, would you please read the title?
Yes, ordinance number 430 is an ordinance of the Town Commission of the Town of Sewalls Point, Florida, repealing Chapter 6, alcoholic beverages, Section 6-3, distance between establishments, providing for severability, the repeal of all conflicting ordinances, codification, and an effective date.
All right, excellent. Opening it up to public comment. Seeing none, I will close the public comment. Is there any discussion amongst the commissioners? I don't see any.
I'll
Commissioner
move
Fender.
to approve ordinance 430 as presented after the second reading.
I'll second it.
Excellent. Any discussion? I do not see any. Let's call the vote.
Mayor Mayfield,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Campo,
Yes.
Commissioner Fender,
Yes.
Commissioner Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Tombeck.
Yes.
All right, excellent. Moving along. All right, now we are getting to old business. The state appropriations request, just a quick discussion synopsis. I will take the lead on that one. I had brought up at prior meetings that the town was making 2 state appropriations requests this year. I attended the Martin County Legislative Delegation meeting along with the town manager, our town consultants, engineer Joe Capra, and grant manager Amy Adams. Made the presentation to our delegates. It seemed like everything was on task, and I was hopeful for the chance for the town to acquire funds. Needless to say, when I learned early last week that one of their requests, the $900,000 for South Sewalls Point Road, had not been submitted by the deadline, I was surprised and disappointed. Amy put together a call with Representative Overdorf, and I was pleased that he was readily available to talk. We had a conference call where we learned that a late submission would not be available to the town, but that there is the possibility of funds available in the future due to additional funds potentially available for resiliency projects. So yes, this is not the way we wanted it to go. The town manager provided a memo and backup in the agenda to apprise the commission and residents of what occurred. You know, what's done is done, and I hope we use the experience to do better in the future. Amy, our consultant grant manager, is in the audience, and I think she would like to speak, and I'd like to give her the opportunity. I want to thank her for being available to talk after the phone call with Representative Overdorf, and for apologizing for her part played in any confusion that may have occurred. And that's it. Amy?
Thank you very much, Mayor Mayfield. Thank you, I think you've read the memo. I think you've realized that the legislative aid for Representative Overdorf overlooked our first application that was submitted to him on the 28th. And despite the comment that there was 8 applications put in, there was actually 2 emails with the first application, because I could not get the online application to work and show our budget. And I think Mayor Mayfield asked me about that. I encountered 2 major errors of the portal pushing it back to me. So a total of 4 were sent for that application, 2 of which they didn't see. And then 1 was submitted for a submittal to the legislative aid for the sewer project. He essentially said he missed it, and it's an unfortunate situation. Moving forward, the state, we did find out that he would strongly support the House Bill 2919 for the sewer project, which is $185,000 request for a $370,000 overall project for the business and town hall sewer connection. And he said, you know, he did talk about some DOE money, which is actually more directed at low-income communities. However, I thought it would be a good idea for him to follow up with him at this point. That's saying that, number one, you do have that $1.25 million funding that was on the Water Management District list, and I would have you request to him that he strongly support that, so that is on the list first for the $25 million this year for year 2 of the $25 million. There are, I think, a total of 9 projects, and we're number 3 in the rank that didn't get funded. So, I mean, we're in good stead, but we would appreciate his support, and I can give him the tracking for that. The other item is I kind of went into a tailspin after this. Because you could have knocked me over with a feather when he told me. I just was like stunned that it didn't go in. That said, I did speak with many of our colleagues at DEP. They realized that the South Sewalls Point project, that they've given us $600,000 on the first round of appropriations with Negron and Harrell, is intended to be a repeat for request for funding. That was the $900,000 we were going to. I asked staff there, who have become very close to Joe and I, very close over the last 15 years. I asked Emily Fornash, that directs the stormwater program, the non-point source grant program, if she had any additional leftover funds from this year, because she's about to get another slug from the legislature for the next round of state funds. And when did she anticipate doing another advertisement? Because the last one they had was in fall of 2019. She immediately said, I realize your circumstances, please send in your application immediately to us. And we will review it and look for using up any additional funds here, as well as what comes in May to try and fill that gap. So they're eager to see us go on to phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. They're committed to the project. So this isn't unusual. I mean, there have been situations where, you know, if you send 2 or 3 applications in, not all of them get funded during years. And typically, when you go to DEP staff or state staff and ask for the funding, you can then carry your letter of support from your state rep that would be a strong application. Usually, if that letter's accompanying them, which Senator Harrell's done for several, it gets funded. It gets funded, and you just tell the story. So they encourage us to do that as well. So I think 2 things that you can request is, you know, strongly support the 1.25 million that we've already, you know, been vetted for, and we're number 3 on the list. And can he please provide a letter of support for our DEP application that would go in this spring to ask for the $900,000 that we are not going to be able to, you know, go through. And I would just recommend that. Joe and I have been working with DEP staff during this last week to try and see how we can go forward. We've even expedited the Part 2 process for Phase 1, just so that we didn't have to do an amendment and fall outside the 5-year, you know, required commitment finish date. So we're trying to get underneath that June 2022 deadline of completing everything on time, including the water quality monitoring that's required for 1 year. So we're moving it quicker than we anticipated. They appreciate that. That's a simple change order. They don't have to go back and redraft the whole contract. So in exchange for that, we're just trying to get more funds from them. Okay. So those are 2 positives that I think we can try and go for, and I'll be happy to work with Mayor Mayfield to get those accomplished.
Okay, thank you, Amy.
So, yep.
I appreciate the positive points and focusing on those. All right. Seeing no comments, we will move on to, hold on, new business. New business, Marathon of the Treasure Coast. Town manager, would you?
Point of order.
Yes. Commissioner Fender? Oh, Commissioner Fender, sorry.
So I just want to make a couple comments before we go into this topic. First is that I need to disclose that I have a financial interest or had a financial interest in this event.
Okay.
And while I sold my primary interest in it last year, I benefit from the success of this event, so I think I have to disclose this form, and I also cannot vote on this topic if it comes to a vote. But I'd like to add to that probably nobody in this room, other than maybe a couple of people, know more about this event than I do, since I founded it and also live in this town, so I'll probably have some comments to make that you might find beneficial.
Okay,
So I'll submit this to April as a disclosure of conflict of interest, all right?
okay, thank you. Thanks for the heads up. Town
Madam
manager?
Mayor, if we could just confirm with the town attorney, Commissioner Fender is allowed to participate with the discussions, just not voting, and so I just want to put that on the
He has
record.
disclosed his conflict and potential conflict, and he can participate but not vote.
Okay, thank you. Town manager?
Madam Mayor, members of the commission, attached in your backup information is information about the Marathon of the Treasure Coast. And the short version of this is, we recognize this is a year-over-year event that comes into our town and is very popular and well-received. The information came to our chief of police and to administration late this year. So we didn't receive the first email introducing the idea until February 4th, I believe it was. And I would ask the chief of police if she wants to join me at the lectern for additional feedback. But since then, the chief of police, our lieutenant, and our fire districts have worked together to appropriately plan the event out. There are some, as in with any event, concerns as we move forward. The reason I needed to bring this back to the commission again is because the participant number is around 800, it sounds like now. And the direction from the commission in the past has been administratively handle it as long as it's about 500 people as participants or under. And so since this is a larger event, and since it seems to encompass much of South Sewalls Point Road, this was something that I had asked to bring to the commission to give us a thumbs up, thumbs down. Now, of course, this is a little late in the game, so my suggestion and recommendation is to support it with the understanding that our chief is working hand in hand with the sheriff and the sheriff's deputies to ensure a very smooth process. But in case you get calls from constituents that are either unaware or did not get information, I think if they're leaving to go to church on Sunday morning, they may have some difficulty getting out. So I think that that's one area that I wanted to make sure that we were aware of before I turn it to Tina. And the second item, the reason this was different is because in the past, this has been categorized as a not-for-profit organization. My understanding is that it has turned into a for-profit organization, and that has not been the direction from the commission in the past. Again, I know that you're in a situation, and I apologize for that this event is scheduled for right around the corner. So just wanted to bring it to you, and then later on in the agenda, we can talk about special events themselves. But on this particular issue, I'll ask the chief for a few pieces of information, and I'm looking for a thumbs up or thumbs down from the commission.
Thank you, Town Manager. Tina?
Thank you. Just one thing I do want to mention that is a little bit possibly different in Sewalls Point compared to maybe some other areas of the county or the city of Stewart, which is that, you know, our primary role in the police department, and I'm sure from the town's perspective as well, is to provide for our citizens as our number one priority. And then once you tell us that you would like to do something, then that also becomes our priority to facilitate that and make that happen. In years past, we had actually gotten the marathon to a relatively well-oiled machine. It did still result in, we'll call it congestion from the runners, largely on the south end of town. But we've been making that work, and even in an after-action report from last year, we're changing some of that area from Heritage to Miramar, which becomes only one way, stop and go, controlled by officers, and actually having to expand that out to Copair for safety's sake. So we're kind of surprised this year when a month before the race, we now know that we have a new organization, which is a for-profit company that substantially changed the route of the marathon and the volume of runners on our roads at the same time. Previously, the races split, half went one way, half went the other way, and eventually they met in the middle, but by that point, things were somewhat diluted. Now, all of our runners, both half and full marathon runners, will be entering the south end of Sewalls Point at the same time. Not at the same moment, but in that same grouping. They're not splitting and separating. And how much worse that might make it, I can't answer for you. Which is why in my discussions with the town manager, I said, I think, for this year, we're just going to have to do it, watch it, see what happens, and go from there. But I think the part that in our discussions with the new company, as well as the documents that they've submitted, is that they believe the race should support 750 to 1,200 runners. So the question comes down the line, the town commission's going to need to make, and it's, some of you have been here long enough to know some time ago we had a company here with a triathlon out of South Florida that wanted to host an event here in Sewalls Point. And we kind of get put in a little bit of a bad position here in that, do you want to allow for-profit companies or just not-for-profits? Do you want, there's half marathons, full marathons, 5Ks. How many can you have? How many do you want to have? Do you want to have a 5K every weekend starting in the town park? We're here to facilitate whatever you'd like. Okay, it's our job, once you say you want those things, to make them happen and have them occur as safely as possible. But there's a lot of those questions that start to come up. And if you say argumentatively, we're going to have 3 5Ks, which 3? Do the folks who have done it many times get first dibs? Does somebody new get first dibs? How do those things work? And in the absence of that planning, it does put us in a difficult position. Who do you say yes to? Who do you say no to? Do we just say yes to everyone? We want to, try and not be extremely rigid, but we don't have a whole lot of guidelines. And when there's a substantial change from what's been originally brought to you, we're now kind of in a position, well, I would also recommend that we just see what happens this year. The major point of concern, I have 2 things, one of which is that the sheriff's office no longer wants to cross traffic at St. Lucie Boulevard and Ocean. They want to cross traffic in front of Benahana. So all those half marathon runners, in addition to running down Sewalls Point Road and South River Road, at some point will also be crossing Ocean Boulevard in the morning. So, and they're going to have to handle that. I mean, the design of this course now basically brings 4, 6, at least 8 police officers into Sewalls Point just to manage the runners on this current course. So,
And if I may stop you there, because a lot of this discussion is about special events itself, but for this particular purpose, this is about this particular event.
Okay.
so are we good with that? Recognizing that there is a change. I cannot definitively tell you what the traffic situation will be. I had discussion today with the acting fire chief about changing some of their plans to try and enhance the safety of our citizens, because that was kind of my number 1 concern, is that the runners present challenges even for public safety vehicles and for emergency response deep into the south end of town. A couple of, a minute or 2 for a cardiac patient is too long, adding to those. So we did discuss some changes in way things will be deployed to minimize that. Basically, we're working with the race organizers, our fire department, and the sheriff's office, since they will need to manage the crossing at Benahana, as well as the crossing on North Sewalls Point Road at State Road A1A, where there's another crossing, and work with those partners, just recognizing that it's not going to look like it has in the past, and there may be more impact than what you're accustomed to.
Okay. Thank you, Tina. I will say at this point, I do support moving forward with it, but definitely addressing it in the other items, special events. I did want to ask one question, or actually 2 real quick. That area right here between Miramar and Heritage,
Yes.
there's always going to be 1 lane open, because it looks like there's,
Not always, well, there is a lane open, and what we have to
Okay.
do, it's actually going to be bumped up to Copair. So
Okay.
from Copair to Miramar, we have officers at each one of those intersections in communication on separate walkie-talkies, and we have to let northbound go, stop, and then let southbound go.
okay, but there will be,
stop. And even with that, Lieutenant Wade and I were having discussions earlier, that may be somewhat of a dynamic situation from previous races with only 500 people. We found it a problem in that short of an area with the vehicles and runners interacting, because the full marathon runners are going to keep on running there, and so they're probably going to be in the same lane with the cars trying to run northbound. So we're going to bump that back a block and hope that it does not back up traffic to A1A. So we may,
okay,
we're going to start with that, see what happens, and have to change it as needed based on the circumstances. We're going to have to
Okay.
be somewhat dynamic with it
okay.
and feeling it out.
All right, thank
Hold
you.
on, Comments for a second.
Hold them for, and I would like to say that use that electronic messaging board to warn people would be a great idea if we
But we
can,
definitely send out an email blast.
okay. And maybe that, I like that board,
Be patient, leave a little early,
Gotcha.
The big thing is be patient.
yes. Commissioner Tom Peck.
Yeah, I'm just curious, are there additional costs associated with overtime for the police, and how are they handled? And should there be a discussion of the cost for a for-profit versus a non-profit? Should that be part of the discussion? I'm not sure, I'm really asking the question there.
Do you want to say that for I think she's looking for just, do we want to go forward with this marathon since it's happening in a week, 2 weeks?
Well, I'm still curious about the
Oh, okay,
answer to the
okay.
question.
The cost of the detail, officers that are detailed to the race is paid by the company that hosts the race.
And to answer the rest of the question, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Commissioner, I would like to discuss that in the special events portion, because my understanding is that this particular organization is paying the full-on commercial fees to the city of Stewart and Martin County, and then full detail. And they're pulling permits with them. We just don't have anything in place. And so we are not receiving any funds for that, for this race.
Is that good? Okay, thank you. If anybody else, Commissioner?
I actually will answer some questions. I have plenty of things to say, but I don't think it'll benefit you to hear them unless you have interest in answering questions.
I think it may help anybody who hasn't made up their mind, but if we've made up our mind as
Well,
to.
okay, I'll say a couple of things then first.
Commissioner?
Yeah, just from a high level without getting into the detail of this, I think as leaders in our community, we provide healthy fitness outlets for our constituents, and there are plenty of things we do. We do the 4th of July party, we do the Christmas party, but one thing we also do for our residents is find ways to keep them healthy. And if we can entice residents to get off the couch, get away from the boob tube, and get out into the open air and do healthy things, I would say throughout COVID, I've been running 3 times a week, and I believe it has kept me sane and healthy through this interesting time. So from a leadership perspective, I can't imagine why we would limit the opportunities for our residents to get involved in healthy activities. So I think that's just a base point. So this is, to me, is kind of like mom and apple pie. I mean, this is a Boston qualifying event on the Treasure Coast, which people run this event so that they might be able to run a more prestigious event in another part of the country. So it brings a lot of notoriety to our area. It showcases the beautiful aspects of our community, not only Sewalls Point, but other parts of the Treasure Coast as well. So, you know, I could talk a little bit about the profit, nonprofit aspect of it. Really, all of these events support charities. So every year for the last 8 years since I've been involved, and I know it's happening this year as well, we've supported as many as a dozen charities in any given event. And by the way, runners really don't want to get involved with an event that they're not, most of us run for a cause. It doesn't matter if the person putting it on is a for-profit or nonprofit organization. We've been able to raise over $190,000 over the last 8 years for the 12 charities we support on the Treasure Coast. In fact, just today, my phone rang and the Arc of Martin County called me in a frenzy saying, I don't have runners to run in the relay this year. What am I going to do? And I'm like, why don't you have them walk the half marathon and do a walking marathon for the Arc of Martin County? And she goes, oh, that's a great idea. So she went off to work on her walkathon thing. So there's a huge community outreach from a philanthropic perspective, whether the organizer of the event is a profitable entity or not. So there's an outreach on all of these things. So I don't know, I can go into a lot of the detail on the nuance and the stress it puts on our great first responders during this, and we love their involvement. And I think we've had a great partnership over the years, and anytime they've come to us and said, we have a problem here, we've done backflips to fix those things, and I think you'll find that this year will actually even be easier than previous years because they changed the route, so we don't even go into North Sewalls Point. We don't have to close the North Sewalls Point Road this year, so it'll be, in my perspective, from the experience I have, a much easier race this year, and it'll be done in Sewalls Point in the morning. We won't use the rest of the day, so it'll even be less stress on our police officers beyond the morning time. So anyway, I've said a lot, and there's more to say, but
Okay. Well, thank you, Commissioner. If there's no more discussion, can I get a vote to approve the running of the marathon
I'd
this
like
year?
to make a motion to move the running of the marathon.
I'll second it.
And I don't see any more discussion, so call the vote, please, Town Clerk.
Commissioner Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Tom Peck,
Yes.
Mayor Mayfield,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Campo.
Yes.
Yeah, I forgot. Okay.
guys,
All right, excellent. Moving on to the next new business item is the Homewood STA design. Town manager, would you please present the item?
Absolutely. Let me get this up here for you. Okay, for tonight's consideration only, as you take a look at the backup information, is the amended contract for engineering services associated with the Homewood STA. So as you all remember, the original Homewood outfall project originating in 2019 was the first step in trying to make sure that we reduce the flooding in that part of South Sewalls Point Road. Since then, we have learned that we have cooperative new landowners who want to willingly participate in creating an STA. That means that new designs have to occur. And so we have had a verbal conference calls, verbal commitments from our partners at FDEM and FEMA. And we believe that all of these funds will be eligible for reimbursement, including in the future the land funds. But for tonight's purposes, I needed to bring back before you a new expanded, amended contract from the original from 2019 in order for the engineering services to become completed for the new STA.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, town manager. Is there any discussion amongst the commission? I do not.
My folder is a little disorganized.
Is
I
it?
just want to make sure it's my,
I will hand you mine, sir.
no, I just, the memo is February 23rd, Town Commission Priority Finance. That's the memo, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's in the back, though. It's a little bit
That's-
farther
I
back
just
than we're looking at.
may have flipped them.
I think in mine, the marathon was in a different place and switched around, so.
It was running around.
It was running. It was a good one.
Immediately following this, Madam Mayor and Commissioners, Vice Mayor and Commissioners, is the budget amendment that would allow us to get this taken care of. So we wanted to put these two next to each other so that you didn't have to do the resolution for a budget amendment first without an explanation of what it was. So the total here is running at $147,000, so the allocation will be for $150,000 for design.
Thank you. I do not see any discussion, so I will see, do we have a motion to approve the modified contract?
I'll make a motion to approve the modified contracts.
Second.
I don't see any more discussion, so Town Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Commissioner Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Tom Peck,
Yes.
Mayor Mayfield,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Campo,
Yes.
Commissioner Fender.
Absolutely.
All right, that will move us right along into the related budget amendment number 1, resolution number 900. Town Manager, do you want to present it?
Yes, I'll ask our Finance Director to come to the lectern. Before you is the information for budget amendment number 1 for this year, and that is simply to make sure that we can pull the monies that we do anticipate getting reimbursed through the state FEMA in the future. So lead it over to Cheryl.
You gave a brilliant introduction, so essentially, since this was not an item that we thought that we were going to be moving forward with in this fiscal year, we are asking to pull this from the reserves. There's a memo there telling you what the unrestricted fund balance would be, still well over $800,000 at the end of this, and then, of course, with the expectation that grant funds would reimburse the expense.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. I'm also going to ask the town attorney real quick to read the resolution into the title before we read the title into the record before we discuss.
Thank you. Resolution number 900 is a resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Sewalls Point, Florida, adopting an amendment to the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget, directing the town manager to take action to implement budget amendment number 1 and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Glenn. All right, discussion amongst commission. Commissioner Campo.
Yeah, I know this whole bundle of Homewood has got a couple different components, but I want to ask Glenn and just make him aware. And I know you come up here once a month and you visit often, but we've got the lots, what are known as 78 and 80 South Sewalls Point Road, and I think we made great progress to try to hopefully make some inroads to possibly get as many as 2 STAs out of that. And I just want to make sure that you're comfortable because you're in the negotiation with those landowners, that the one landowner is proceeding with the construction of the home on the rear of that lot. And we had a contingency in that contract that said, the way I remember, that if we don't get substantial funds through granting, that we do not have to perform on that contract. So I wanted to make sure and have your assurance that we're in a comfortable situation legally with that moving ahead. And I know the building official and the town manager have got their specific jobs, and I'm sure they've dotted their i's and crossed their t's, but since you're negotiating that contract, I want to make sure that you're absolutely aware of what's happening, and that the whole project meets with what you're doing on the legal side.
Yes, yes, you're correct. That,
Okay.
we have outs in this contract so far. You know.
Okay, then I'll move approval of the budget resolution.
I'll second it.
All right, I see no more discussion. Town Clerk, would you please call the vote for the motion to approve resolution number 900?
Commissioner Tompak?
Yes.
Mayor Mayfield?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Campo?
Yes.
Commissioner Fender?
Yes.
Commissioner Kurzman?
Yes.
All right, excellent. And I think this topic is still on our minds because we moved quickly. So, policy for special events, discussion. Town Manager, would you present this aspect of it, please?
Madam Mayor, Commission, it's just a great opportunity, since we were talking about the other thing, to get a temperature check from you and see if this
Point of
is...
order, am I allowed to participate in this aspect of it?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay. We don't have any policies and procedures, and often I believe in the past, before me, I think you've depended on administration to handle these things, so it doesn't have to come before commission all the time. And I'm quite okay with that if you want to create some boundaries or some, lines in the sand. I think the previous line in the sand was just the participants number, so if it was 500, we could take care of business with that. So if you'd like to do that, that's fine, if you know what you want to do. Otherwise, what I'm offering is, if you want us to work on it, I could gather information from the other municipalities to give you an idea of how they collect fees, how they create permits for special events, and you can take a look at that at a workshop and determine if you want to move forward. I think the last time we discussed this, when I first came on, there was a culture and a feeling that we wanted to continue the small town feel and, be welcoming to events like this. And of course, I believe it's part of our brand here in Sewalls Point that we are an athletic, outdoor, health-oriented community. However, it doesn't mean that we should absorb and subsidize with taxpayer money for-profit organizations. And I wanted to make sure that I was checking in on what the commission believes the policy should be. And it might need to be two different policies, one for nonprofits and one for profits. And if you just prefer to have it come back to you as well, then we can do that. We serve at your pleasure, so you let us know how you would like us to serve.
Thank you, Town Manager. Commissioner Campo?
Yes, I'm very delicate. I know it's a very delicate situation that you've had to kind of navigate, and I think it's a strong point of yours to be able to do it in a diplomatic way, but put the cards on the table. And I think you've done that. I think being able to come up with a solution like you have is a testament to your leadership. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And also knowing that Tina can handle this, no problem. I mean, that's, a gun and a badge makes me feel comfortable too, okay? I'm just going to say it. As far as the profit versus not profit, I don't know that in and of itself, I mean, we had these sweet moms pushing their children in strollers, and they just got all upside down on something that, talk about mom and apple pie. I mean, you don't get much more mom and apple pie from that. But because one lady was actually charging for a monthly membership into the, it just, became a big buzzsaw. So I don't know that the profit versus nonprofit sponsor is problematic for me. I do think that, we asked Michelle to be a good steward of the money, and we, beat her up when it comes to the tax millage rate, and we have to be fair when we're asking that, she's spending resources. So I think that it should be as revenue neutral as possible with the resources that we spend on it. And I think it's probably the beginning of a discussion that we will be open to any suggestions that you had. And again, I appreciate you bringing it up to us. And I'm glad that we were able to get this one done. I could see, maybe the chief saying that the maximum capacity for an event in this town might be, 800 or 700 or 1,000 or something like that. That might be, to me, I'm worried about public safety, because if someone gets hurt and it comes back, it's more than dollars and cents, So I would think that when we start outlining the discussion, the policy creation, we might have a realistic conversation on how many people could max out, running through the town. That might be a parameter that we have to kind of examine. But I agree with this. This is a beautiful town, and people love running under those trees. It's great branding. I think the plaza would really like to get more involved in some of this, and they're trying to hopefully break down that wall. And it was Michelle's job interview. She says, yeah, you need to knock down that wall so that we can be one with the plaza. So if we could do that, I think it's really brings that hometown feel, but we have to be wise with the public money. So that would be my direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Fender.
So I'll just add to maybe some of the components you brought up before, especially around permitting, because I've been involved with a lot of events that we have here in town, and the 500 runner cap has always been a tradition since I've been around. But that 500 runner cap was really instituted, and you can correct me where I go astray, Chief, for events that we host here. So if they're going to have an event in the park and there are going to be parking issues, that's where the 500 cap has always been in place. We haven't actually had too many events until the Halloween half and the marathon, where all we wanted to do was borrow some street and run through. We're not going to stop. We're not going to park. We're not going to use resources. We'll pay for police officers that want to direct traffic. So I believe the 500 runner cap is legitimate for say a Pineapple 5K or some kind of hosted event that's happening here that starts and perhaps finishes in the region. But a permit to drive your car through the town or run on the pedestrian roadway through, we should by all means have a permit process, and we could even charge something for that. But more importantly, with that permit process comes the liability waiver to make sure that if something should happen, we're protected from it. And safety is job one for not only us as a town, but also the people running the event. They've got significant insurance requirements, and they also don't want the stigma of that held over their event either. So I think there's a completely different capacity issue for passing through, although there certainly is a limit. I don't know what it is, but we've never approached it in the races that I've been involved in, and we had 1,600 people run last year. And, they're spread out. When they come through the town, they're never in a huge clump. They're stretched out over a long period of time. So at any given time, is there 500 people in town? Maybe, but it's probably not, right? I mean, and you wouldn't see them because they're not all in one big pile. They're three abreast, perhaps, and Chief would say they don't stay in their lanes, and they're really wide, but they're not giant mobs. They're running to get through and get done, So anyway, I don't know that 500 is a reasonable cap for an event passing through. Profit versus nonprofit, I'll put my Republican hat on. I think we make a lot of progress with profitable companies as long as they're for a good cause, because people aren't going to want to be involved in an organization that is not generating goodness for the community, and also those profitable companies enable lots of philanthropy. So all of those philanthropic organizations get to participate in a for-profit entity and use that as a fundraising entity. So I would say let's establish a permitting process. There are 3 municipalities that we run through for the marathon that I'm aware of: the city of Stewart, Martin County, and Sewalls Point. And I'll have to tell you, I'll bare my soul, is that for the smallest, easiest town among those three, we are the most difficult to get this event to go through. City of Stewart loves to host the marathon. The Martin County permitting process is smooth as silk, and, you know, the information flows. They have an actual computer process that makes sure that the chief responds, the fire department responds, and there's a cost to it, but it's not exorbitant, you know, I mean, and so we should certainly cover our costs and maybe even make a little money, but it's, you know, we're not talking about, there's not as much money in these events as you might imagine, and I can tell you that as a person who tried to actually make it a global concern, so anyway.
Isn't that what we're talking about, is just coming up with the process and documenting the process? So,
sure.
I mean, I think the recommendation here is fine. You can direct staff to go ahead and put together the process for us to take a look at. And you can make a determination based on conversations with the chief about the number of people or whatever.
Okay.
Take a first crack at it.
Yeah.
I think the town attorney wanted to add something in.
Only that we just had last 2 weeks ago an experience with special events that made me kind of think about maybe saying something. So in a parking lot, we wound up having 3 nights with a stage with 2,000 people a night. And thank goodness that town had a special event permit process where they were required to get fire marshal checking the stage, police department getting paid time. So, you know, we are a small town. Everything's very informal, but that made me think, ooh, maybe we really is time to get into the special events. I'll add my voice to the chorus that it makes sense to have some kind of special event ordinance process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Seeing no more discussion, can I get a motion to direct staff to bring back recommendations for policy creation?
So move.
Second?
All right, excellent. Town clerk, will you please call the vote?
Mayor Mayfield?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Campo?
Yes.
Commissioner Fender?
Yes.
Commissioner Kurzman?
Yes.
Commissioner Tombeck?
Yes.
Madam Mayor, lastly,
Yes.
if I may, to the commission, I absolutely understand Mr. Fender, or Commissioner Fender, about the differences you might experience when you go town to town and county to county. And what I would ask you to remember is typically when you're dealing with the front line in those situations, they have a team of Parks and Recs people who have a different mindset than maybe, you know, public safety has. And then that transitions within that organization to the public safety and to the fire department and whoever else needs to be part of the logistics. And they're just following direction of, you know, the cheerleading team that said, yeah, this is a great event. So you will always have in a city public support for events when you have a Parks and Recs department that gets funded for these things and may even get credit and funding for other issues to be able to promote the health. So we've just got to, you know, we have to create that culture of that acceptance within our town without it actually having a department. But I would say to you, there's nobody that cares more than this police department about your residents, and that's what we're looking out for.
Absolutely.
So thank you for your understanding.
Excellent. Thank you. Good point.
Yes.
Okay, we are moving along. Commission and staff updates and closing comments. First, we will go to staff comments. Any comments? Town
Staff
manager?
comments? Yes, Madam Mayor and Commission, we have, as you remember, March 6th scheduled a workshop, and that is on a Saturday. We have the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council ready to come and help us with the next level visioning session, building on last year's information. So they have received the goals and priorities and everything that was executed last year, and they'll be building on that. And I will need to get Commissioner Tompeck an updated information about last year's goals and priorities. And that is, I was just going to discuss that with you. So I have currently a start time of 9 a.m. I was wanting to ask the commission, would you be willing or would you like to do a ceremonial ribbon cutting at the park playground at 8:30?
That'd be cool.
Yes, people love the playground.
I think that would give us enough time, informal, because I want the day also to be informal, so please come comfortable, because it's going to be a long day. But if we could
Here, right?
meet, yes, we're going to do it here so that we can videotape it.
Awesome.
But if we could meet over there and we'll advertise that we're going to do a very informal, small ribbon cutting right in front of the playground, I think that would be fun.
I like that.
Ceremonial exercise.
Great idea.
Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
All right, so we'll do that. Okay.
All right.
And that is it. That's what we have. And let me just eyeball anybody else. You good? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right. Thank you. Any commissioner comments? Commissioner Campo.
Just being a little playful, when you think of lobbyists, you think of smoke-filled rooms and deals being made, but we've got one in our midst, and I just wanted to give her a shout out.
Yes.
Chloe from Martin County is doing such a great job for our community and getting the money that we send up to Tallahassee back. And she's been very patient, and I appreciate you being here and appreciate all the synergy that you're working with Michelle. And I hope that you have a great, successful session. So thanks for being here.
Can we call her up and just introduce her to everyone? I'm not sure everybody knows her.
Sure.
Come on up.
Sorry, I don't mind doing it. She's quite comfortable doing these things.
I'm Chloe Stewperger. I head the Legislative Affairs Division for the County Commission, and I'm here to make sure that, like you said, synergy, especially this year, it's going to be really hard and constrained fiscally. I do think we have a strong shot at infrastructure and especially environmental infrastructure. And I think when we go into it, even as a municipality or a town or a county, and we're a collective with the same initiative and the same goals, I think we're way more effective. And we have a really strong delegation, so I want to make sure that my presence is known. I want to offer myself as a resource to you all, because like I said, I think it just gives us more muscle as a collective. So gear up. It's going to be a very strange session, but I think there
Yes.
will be a lot to come out of it, so keep your eyes peeled.
Now, Chloe is on Martin County's payroll, but I will tell you, she's been so helpful for us. She really has, and she's, going to continue to keep us in mind as she's having the opportunity to tell the stories about all the great stormwater and environmental issues that are going on in our area. I wanted to make sure you knew who she was.
Excellent. Thank you.
And President of Martin County Class Mighty Fine 29.
Leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Commissioner Tompeck.
Yeah, just one quick item, and I was hoping maybe we could get a report on it at the next meeting. I'm sure that Martin County has a resiliency steering committee, and I know they have one in St. Lucie County, and I know we're part of that, and I'm not sure where we are in Martin County in terms of whether Sewalls Point's represented. I'm not sure where they are in terms of what stage of the process they're at, whether they're at the context stage, the vulnerability assessment stage. I'm sure they haven't gotten to the adaptation strategies yet, but there's a lot of work that's associated with that, and I was wondering if somebody could give us an update at the next meeting on that subject.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. Seeing no other comments, can I get a motion to adjourn? All right. All those in favor? Aye. That's how Vinny did it, right?